This is GLPBC 2012, home to the Raw Feed live and rapid-fire topic discussions. You can listen to our shows via live stream by navigating your browser to godlikeproductions.com, or you can listen to our archives located at podcast.godlikeproductions.com. You can also find us on iTunes. GLPBC shows now in its third year are produced in our live, web-based auditorium where listener interaction and participation is encouraged. We are raw, uncensored, where humans from around the globe can discuss, debate, learn, laugh, cry, get angry, and to speak freely about concerns and issues that affect us all. Join the VC team, Phenomenon, Ragman, Hubnuts, Jay, 2342, Kingman Art, ISIS 7, Kung Fu, JDO, Yobo, Libertine, and DSNBC. Because GLPBC, like a poker hand, gives it to you straight. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone, to those listening on the live streams and to those who download off iTunes. Welcome to GLPBC's The Raw Feed. Tonight is Friday, June 22nd, 2012. Tonight's guest is Stewart Swerdlow, a gifted hyperspace intuitive who's moved his consciousness beyond time and space to determine foundational patterns upon which all life experiences are based. Stewart, who speaks in 10 languages, is an expert in deprogramming and determining which Illuminati programs are embedded in the mind patterns of any individual. You can find out more about our guest in the pinned thread in the front page of godlikeproductions.com, or you can navigate your browser over to expansions.com. Tonight's VC team, JDO is producer, ISIS live listener questions, Jay, audio streaming and podcast engineer, Fen, manning duty, and of course, Mr. Nordic Wookiee himself, 2342. 23, let's welcome our guest to Godlike Productions.
Right on. Stewart, thank you so much for making it out tonight, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. As you know, I just came back from a long trip.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, time zones here.
Wow, great. Yeah, you went to Australia, right?
No, I was actually in Africa and Europe.
Oh, okay. Wow, man. Wow, that's great. Well, first off, I just want to say I've heard nothing but good things about you. Actually, a good friend of mine that I've known pretty much my whole life speaks very highly of you. And I've read some of your material and I've listened to some of your interviews. I'm really fascinated with your work. And, I was hoping you could tell our listeners that haven't had an opportunity to hear your life story, I mean, just as far as what brought you to this point and what makes you who you are. It sounds like, from what I know, you've been kind of conditioned since before birth to, have some extra perception abilities that most people don't have astute to.
Stewart just typed in that the sound's cutting out. Stewart, can you hear us?
Yeah, but I missed the whole last bit that he did there.
Okay, 23, can you repeat, please? Okay, we have to call him on his phone. Hold on just a moment. Type it real fast to me, buddy. You can make me look it up.
Are you talking to me?
No, 23. Jay's got it. Thanks, Jay. Wait a minute, Jay. No, I can't. I have to do it. Hold on. I told you I'm a little slow this evening, narcotics. Still in recovery, man.
You need to share.
Okay, I added it. Okay. Okay, I see what I did. There it is. There it goes. You there?
Hey, I'm here. Yeah, sorry about that. I had to change to a different phone so I could actually hear you. So thank you so much for making it out again. I don't know what was heard, so I'm just going to start over. Stewart, I've heard your interviews. I've read some of your work. I'm fascinated with your life story, and somebody that I've known my whole life speaks very highly of you. And I was hoping that you could actually tell our audience that hasn't had a chance to hear about the kind of what you've gone through. And I know that you were also born blind, but now you can see, which gives you some extra abilities to see outside of the typical 0.01% of the electromagnetic light spectrum. So I was just kind of hoping you could share that with us first, and then we could kind of move on from there.
Sure, no problem. Actually, I want to go a little bit further back about my family background, how I led up to the experiences that I had. My great uncle, Yakov Swerdlow, was the first president of the Soviet Union, and my grandmother was a Soviet spy. But I will remind the audience that during World War II, the Soviet Union and the United States were close allies. And my grandfather was sent to the United Kingdom and then to the United States in order to start and help the communist parties in those countries. And so because of that background, my family was very much monitored here in the United States. And then so when I was about 13 years old, I was taken into use in the Montauk Project at the eastern end of Long Island. And there, on the underground base, I was used for mind control experimentation, genetic manipulation, time travel, all kinds of electromagnetic experiments, which left me physically blind. And because of that, they tried to create a person who could see into other realities without the use of a device. So in effect, I became a device that they would use. And I was able to see colors, hear tones, archetype symbols that emanate from people, places, and things, and then learn how to put it all together in a dictionary, which I call a hyperspace dictionary. And when you know how to use the colors, the tones, and the symbols in the proper sequences, you can create whatever it is you wish to create in your reality. And of course, the government used that information to mind control people. And today, all of the information that was used in Montauk Project was downloaded, upgraded, they transmitted through cell phone towers, satellite transmissions, etc. So even though the project ended in 1983, even today in 2012, remnants and aspects of those programmings from Montauk can be transmitted to people throughout the world via satellite. So you don't necessarily have had to have been there to have Montauk programming. It's used as part of the global repertoire.
Well, and I know that in the Hollywood media industry, and with combined with the military-industrial complex, they will use particular color patterns and symbols and sigils and a lot of subliminal programming to condition the masses. Get them ready for war, get them ready for these new green devices or whatever. But it seems like they put a lot of this stuff in the movies where before it happens, they actually let you know about it. Sort of the Fukushima deal that was in the movie Knowing, they let people know about that prior to it happening, the Gulf disaster and many other things. So it's interesting that you bring up these archetypes and these different symbols that you can see that most people can't. I think that that's fascinating. Now, is it like in a different dimension per se, or is it, what do you do when you see these archetype symbols? Is it like similar to auras where you can see, you know what that personality, that individual is? Does it go deeper than that?
Well, everything has an energy, whether it's a living thing or an inanimate object. All things have energy and luminescence. And from that energy that projects out from the object or person or thing, you can see the sequences that helped create it. So in other words, the mind pattern that created that is actually sequenced within its energy field, and you can read that. And as far as a person is concerned, there's two things I look at. The outer imaging is what you refer to as the aura, which is reflective of the emotions and the feelings or mind patterns of the person. But underneath is the chakra system, which basically buttons the soul personality into the body. And the chakra system should be the same sequences of colors in the same order for every individual to create a healthy person. And if I see changes or differences in those colors and those sections, then I know that person has an issue in that particular part of the body, and then I can look further to see which mind patterns are creating that issue and make suggestions both to change the mind pattern as well as heal that part of the body. So that's basically how I do my work in consultations with people. But what I do in my classes is I teach people how to open the 90% of the brain that isn't used, and even more importantly, the 97% of DNA that scientists refer to as junk, to open that up. So you can imagine if even a small percentage of that mind pattern and the DNA is opened, what possibilities and functions you could have.
Well, exactly, and I tell people that all the time. You know, we only use typically about 10% of our brain. 97% of our DNA is considered junk, but it's there for a reason. So if we could tap into that, and those, you know, our abilities, our true abilities, we could do far more than what meets the eye. I know we had a guest on the other night talking about at this enlightened age, people have like 360 senses, and you know, clearly we have more than the 5 typical senses, and to be able to open the mind and tap into that, I find fascinating. That's absolutely incredible. And really, one of the things I wanted to get into first with you tonight, Stewart, and I think everybody else here is really interested in this as well, is the Montauk Project. I mean, what is the Montauk Project, and, you know, as far as, like, what happened there, and who are the culprits? Like, who are the people that put it on in the military level?
Montauk Project was really an outgrowth of the Cold War. It was set in a derelict Air Force base that used SAGE radar that became obsolete in the late 1960s. And of course, that area of Montauk Point was used along the coastline to monitor if there was Soviet aircraft coming in or an invasion force coming in. And that place had been there, the underground, since 1799, when George Washington commissioned the building of the underground for supplies. And then, of course, over the centuries, it was expanded and expanded until they actually broke into underground areas that already existed from Atlantean times. And that's a whole other story with the technology that they found there. But basically, Montauk was about how a small group of people, which we refer to in my work as the Illuminati, the 13 families that control the planet, and, you know, how a few 100,000 of them can control the billions of the rest of the people. And they realized that weapons were not enough because they could be still overwhelmed. So the most logical thing they could do was to mind control and program the population to acquiesce to all the rules and regulations, and then help to create staged scenarios like you saw at 9/11 and Fukushima and the Gulf disaster, all these things to scare people into submission and to impose rules and regulations that would not otherwise have been accepted. And Montauk was also about genetic manipulation and changing the way the DNA operates, and how you can change the resonance of DNA with the HARP project so that people's bodies will change in certain direction. Montauk was also interested in connecting to other timelines, alternate realities, and also to learn how to travel through interstellar space using wormholes and vortices, etc. So there was a lot going on there, as well as an even darker side than that, when they had sexual magic ritual, sacrifice ritual, things like this going on. It was you know, really quite an experience.
Wow. So, I mean, everything was going on. They were doing all sorts of things out there, different experimentations, very horrible things. As far as the darker side of things that you just brought up, I know that we had a guest on the other day, Douglas Dietrich, that was talking about how HARP can actually control these, you know, darker demonic type forces, I guess you could call them, with technology. So I'm wondering if that, you know, they used some of what they learned in Montauk to do that. And the interstellar travel you're talking about, that's quite fascinating. How would these, portals open up? Would people, were they able to do it with their mind because they were unlocking parts of their DNA that, are dormant for most people?
Well, the travel, the deep space travel and the interdimensional travel was done through frequency. They knew the basic science that every point in time and space is unique. There are no two points in time and space that are identical, otherwise they'd be the same point. So, if you know the frequency or coordinate vibrations of the target location, and then you match that with the sending location, there's an instantaneous connection, and a wormhole or vortex is created, and then you can pass through instantaneously, and no passage of time. And this is how time travel is accomplished, and how deep space travel. That's how you can go light years from one end of the galaxy to another, or intergalactic travel in a matter of split second, simply by connecting the two frequency points.
Now, can that be done physically as well, or is it just like a mental?
Oh no, it's completely physical. I mean, there is a mental time travel, which I do teach in my classes, and that's energetic. However, this was physical, to actually send a person or a thing from point A to point B. Then what they had to do was map the various locations, or target locations as they call the coordinates at all times, and then once they did, they would send someone through or something through with what they called an anchor device that would be a constant connection to the point of origin. So in other words, it would connect point A to point B, keep putting the coordinates in.
Jeez, that's definitely very advanced stuff. I know that I read an article a while back that was talking about how Obama was a part of some project where he went to Mars or something like that, and I clearly thought that was disinformation, like a psyop tactic. But there's also somebody that lives in Seattle that claims to have been a part of some type of program similar to what you're discussing, and I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but I found that very fascinating. And it is incredible too, because everything is connected at some point. So what you're talking about doesn't seem like it's impossible by any means. It's just very, very advanced technology. I mean, are they still doing this with is that how you see some of these structures on Mars and the Moon and stuff like that? I've seen what looks like pyramids on Mars, and Hubble telescope picture of what looked like the pyramid on the Moon here. So it was the 1997 photograph taken from the Hubble telescope, and there's all sorts of stuff in this solar system as well, just like Iapetus and Mimas and Phobos. So did they use some of that same technology, previously in a previous civilization that they were kind of tapping into in the Montauk project? Is that how those things were moved?
Basically, the objects that you see on Mars, the pyramids, the face, etc., there's actually entire cities on Mars. They were built a long, long time ago. And yes, there is a Mars underground that does use this technology, and that's how some beings transfer between places. But there's also a physical transport using other vehicles. The moon, as you may have read in some of my books and work, is an artificial object. It was actually driven into our solar system in order to colonize the planet a very, very long time ago. And so much of what you see in those craters are part of what is inside the moon, and those are the entry points that you would go to get inside. The universe, our solar system, and our planet is not what you learned about in school.
Well, no, I mean, clearly not. I've read reports that the rocks that they brought back from the moon were all tested to be hundreds of millions of years older than the Earth. They were like a titanium alloy compound. Many of them had brain cells inside of them. I know that there's giant maskins on the dark side of the moon, which probably some type of gravitational thrusters. I know Plato and Socrates talked about people on the Earth prior to the moon. Some people speculate that the great flood that happened actually happened when this moon was brought into that particular location. And it seems to be like there's so many different levels that it's there for. It's almost like, the Truman Show looking up at a recording studio. But I mean, I don't know what's going on in there. I mean, are there a combination of grays? I mean, are there mantis aliens out there? Are there Wookiees, Nordics? I mean, is there a combination? Are they all clones too? Because we've had people say that they're all clones.
Well, a lot of the beings that are reported are cloned. However, that's not their natural way for production. As far as the moon is concerned, that was a reptilian object that was brought here to colonize at the time the continent called Lemuria, and they were androgynous reptilian beings. I write about this in my Blue Blood book. But at this point, there's a whole bunch of groups out there. Since I'd say the late 80s, maybe a little bit before, the New World Order or the Illuminati have only dealt with a few of these, not all of them, and the others are considered unwelcome and unfriendly. So there's limited interaction these days. But once you get beyond our solar system, there are literally tens of millions of civilizations just in this galaxy alone. And then you can multiply that by hundreds of billions of galaxies out there and infinite. So it's almost impossible to conceive of the numbers of different species that exist in our totality.
Well, I mean, as far as the beings go, and then you say that's not how they were originally created, but now they're cloned or whatever. Is that kind of how they continue their lifespan, so they can live 1,000 years, 5,000? Just basically, as long as they choose to, they keep downloading their consciousness.
Well, even human DNA has been shown to be immortal. And that was in USA Today many years ago, an article about that, and the scientists didn't know why human beings age or get ill, since the DNA is designed to be immortal. But of course, if you understand about mind pattern and mind patterns affecting and creating DNA, you have to go back to the source, which is the way you think. But as far as these alien groups are concerned, they are basically away from home, and so they need to be available for extended periods of time, and the best way to do that is through cloning and not the natural reproductive methods, which just take time and a lot of effort.
Well, and it seems like that's what I like to call them the totalitarian dungeon masters. Maybe it's these 13 bloodlines you're talking about. It clearly seems like that's what they're doing right now. They're trying to, make people do away with the family. They want to integrate everybody with, brain chips, hook everybody up in the machines. They want to catalog all the birds and animals and insects of the world so they can be this more efficient system. And then they want to create these super intelligent systems to dictate what humans do that have no emotions. And it seems like they are feeding off of this, dark energy, what I like to call dark ecstasy. So, I mean, are these bloodlines, are they taken over by these reptilians? Are these, was David Icke right? I mean, when he said that there's these fourth dimensional beings that are literally affecting the way that the people that control this world think?
Yes, that's correct. The ones that he's talking about are, they pass through or exist in the very lower astral where it borders onto our physical reality. So in effect, human beings become like a glove, and they're the hand that sticks into the glove and makes it move and do things. And so that's another control system in addition to what the Illuminati are perpetrating upon the public. But there are also physical reptilian beings that exist in areas on the earth, underneath and in the inner earth, that manipulate what goes on the surface. But the Illuminati themselves trace their ancestry all the way back to Babylon and Sumer, to the hybridization there, where the reptilians increased their genetics into the human mammalians. But all humans have some percentage of reptilian DNA, and that goes back a very long time ago when the Atlanteans and the Lemurians created a peace treaty idea where they would mix their genetics to create a third race that would be a synthesis of the two and hopefully enable peace to exist between the two opposing forces. But each group donated their DNA and put instructions in their DNA to become dominant over the other. So right away, mankind was born with inner conflict because of the way their DNA is structured. So that is why, in my opinion, there's so many issues on this planet, both from personal individuals as well as in groups. We need to really open up that DNA, look at the sequences, instructions in there, and make the necessary changes so that we could have a more harmonious existence.
Right, because it's all, you know, the more people you get to join together that are all focused on one particular thing is going to be more effective, obviously. And the DNA, it's like a biological computer, it seems like to me, and there's this information stored in there. I've done meditation before where I've been able to tap into things that nobody had ever told me, you know, part of my ancestry that was just, you know, and no one had ever told me about my particular ancestors, and I was able to find it out just by meditation. So, you know, whether that's tapping into the Akashic records or just your own DNA, like a biological computer, and even Russian scientists back that claim up that, you know, DNA can interact with each other simultaneously. So that's clearly fascinating. And I like how you brought up a minute ago, Stewart, about how the DNA was designed to be, you know, basically limitless, where you could, you know, live perpetually forever. But because of these programs in place by these psychopathic dungeon masters, where they've created these programs to, you know, narcissistic psychopathic programs where, you know, people literally stick up for the ones that are destroying them, and the ones that are trying to help them, they kill or, you know, they ridicule. So it's a very effective system, obviously. But so like, what do you do then to really kind of break out of this, you know, programming where we've been designed to think we're only going to live a certain amount of time? You know, we have to do particular things. We have to follow particular orders from, you know, the white collar, not white collar, but white suit wearing doctor with a DR before his name. You know, it's all programming. It seems like they've done it since before our birth. I mean, even when we're in our, you know, mother's womb, you know, our mom is being programmed, and that's going into our, you know, consciousness. So it's quite difficult to break out of, isn't it?
Well, it can be, and of course I think it has to do with the motivation that each person has to do that. But I do teach deprogramming techniques, releasing work, oversoul work, all of the techniques that involve opening up the pineal gland, releasing whatever is stored in the DNA, and then rewriting your own new programs or sequences for yourself that then can become genetically induced. And it's true that a lot of people also have inherited programming that has developed over the centuries, and then more that's been added subsequent to birth via satellite transmission, cell phone tower, you know, all of these electromagnetic transmissions from many different sources that have carrier waves with the programming functions that download into the brain. And every night, in every time zone between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m., when the government is assuming most people will be in a dream state or sleep state, that's when the heaviest ELF transmissions are bombarded so that it's downloaded into the brain and you don't resist.
Jeez. Yeah, so it's full on covert hypnosis. When most people are asleep, that's the best time because you're in theta state, or maybe even deeper, and they can just put those programs right into your mind. So do they have scripts based upon algorithms where they want to get, you know, certain scenarios? So let's say, for example, they decide, okay, yeah, we're now going to go into Iran, which they've been planning for a long time. So they send these programs at night to where, you know, people are going to think, yeah, this is a good thing because Iran, you know, they're full of boogeymen with, you know, they're out to get us. You know, whether they want to bring a new law in or just make people more docile. I mean, what are these programs? Are they words? Are they just frequencies?
Well, it's all frequency, and every word in every language has a set of vibrations that can be downloaded and transmitted as well as received. And so they can transmit any kind of instructions, and you think it's coming from your own mind. And the other interesting thing is, you mentioned before about Russian scientists and DNA. Well, these Russian scientists also noticed that the way the protein bases within the DNA put together, it's very similar to the syntax of language that affect your DNA. So that's why I tell my students and clients that they should be very use, because even thinking them or saying them will affect the structure of the DNA and cause different sets of vibrations that can create illnesses.
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up, too, because I know they've even done reports where there's been people that were given organic food that they weren't able to sleep more than an hour a night, and they had to go through a lot of, like, I guess you could call it conditioning to make them feel on edge the whole time. And then there was another group of people that were given all junk food, but they got to eat together and be happy and get a full night's sleep, and they were far healthier than the other people. And I've seen water samples that have been spoken to with love and spoken to with hate by, particular monks that are very powerful expressing their words, and obviously it breaks down into frequencies. And the water samples that were blessed look like snowflakes. The water samples that were, talked bad to, like said, I hate you, they look like cancer cells. So, yeah, it's very important, and I don't think most people realize that. And, the stronger your mind is, the stronger those powers are, and a lot of times you're creating all these, I guess you could call them mental sylphs or, vampiric entities that just kind of latch on you in the mental plane, don't they?
Well, yeah, there are lower astral entities that do prey on, vulnerable human beings. People who, let's say, take a lot of drugs or, alcoholic, on heavy medication, their energy field is not completely intact, and especially the crown chakra is weak or opened and allows them to become vulnerable, and an energetic being can easily latch onto that. And in my opinion, that is the cause of a lot of the criminal activities in certain areas, mental illnesses, and even depression sometimes.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine that actually deals with people that are suicidal, and she believes it's because of the programming that they picked up, whether it be somebody that said something that made them think suicidal thoughts or something they saw on a TV show or something, and it kind of goes and affects the entire psyche after a period of time, and that's what happens. So, it seems like everything is a program. Everything. It breaks down into programs. Even our own DNA basically breaks down into a 4-level code. So it's almost as if these people have learned how to master this computer program that we're in, or this computer system that we're in, and they know, okay, we push this button and then it's going to create this. And now they've got that new IBM supercomputer called the Blue Gene Q that's running over 16 petaflops, which is 16 quadrillion floating points per second. And I'm wondering if they're using that to actually predict the outcomes of human beings based upon their psychological profiles that have been fished out with the internet. Do you think that something like these brain chips that these top scientists are talking about, where people are going to be integrated with these brain chips, how far down the road do you think something like that's going to be? I mean, these guys are all obviously have the technology to do it now. Why haven't they released it into the mainstream?
Well, I think first they are trying to get people desensitized to it, for example, by showing how it's helping the people with physical handicaps move again, or to how it's helping the blind to see again. And so they make the chips look like they're a good thing that help people. And I even saw an article that said that your body that will read or monitor your body systems 24/7, and if there's any problem, it'll actually, kick in. It will release medication. It'll, give a signal of what you're supposed to take, so that you're always, at perfect condition at all time. And there's even, remember what they said about having a chip in your arm. So you go to the airport and you just wave that through a scanner, and that tells them that you're okay to pass through without anything else. So they're trying to make it look like life will become easier and better by having these chips, and then they desensitize you, and then everybody wants one. You don't have to leave home with your wallet or anything because you've got that chip in your arm, and that's all you ever need.
Right. And, you look at these new phones like the iPhones, the Droids that are coming out that, have 10-megapixel cameras. You can do everything you could do on a computer several years ago. I mean, it's literally more advanced than the computers that they had 20, 30 years ago, that there was the size of two-story buildings. So, they've gotten small, and people everybody's got to leave home with their smartphone. They've got to have their smartphone if they go, to look for a car, or if they go look for an appliance. They want to look up how much it costs, and it's like they have to have it to go get directions to get from point A to point B, even if it's only 4 blocks away. Nobody remembers their phone numbers anymore. So you're right. They are conditioning us. First, it's, give me the smartphone. Now these augmented reality glasses that are going to come out, which look really cool. But then what's next? They're going to say, okay, we're going to give you a brain chip, and then you're going to be able to download Kung Fu and learn Japanese in less than 30 seconds. I mean, you can download the whole internet in 5 minutes. I see it as kind of a scary thing, Stewart, because not only are they, possibly spraying nanoparticulates in the air with these chemtrails, and the FDA admits that they put nanoparticulates in the suntan lotions and in foods now that are literally nanoparticles of styrofoam. They can make motors 1/60th the thousandth the size of a human hair that are fully functionable. They've got micro-sized fuel processors that can take energy out of insects and store it. So, I mean, are they literally trying to imprison us into like this Borg system to where we're all going to be completely desensitized, and it's literally going to be sucking our synapses out, this freaking super intelligent computer system, like we're literally already in the Matrix?
Well, absolutely. That's the intention, is to create a Borg-like society. Matrix programming cube, which when you fracture the brain into compartments, it goes into 13 by 13 by 13, which is 2,197 compartments that can be programmed. And so isn't it interesting that in the Star Trek, when they show the Borg are traveling through space in a cube, and they're part biological and part mechanical, and they all work in unison, they follow instructions, they don't ask any questions, and that's exactly the model for what the future society of Earth is programmed to be.
Well, and to take that even a step further, that Borg cube you see in Star Trek, it looks very similar to the description of the New Jerusalem described in Revelations 21:3, the New Jerusalem that descends from heaven. If you look at the parameters of what it describes, it sounds like a giant Borg cube that's made out of like jasper and gold and sapphires, and it's got this winged, the winged god with eyeballs all over him, and the throne god, they call him, that has these animals that are like integration of different animal parts with eyeballs all over him, worshiping this thing. So that sounds like the Borg cube. And then you find out Gene Roddenberry, the guy that started Star Trek, actually used to go through summoning with many other high-level individuals. They would do these seances, and supposedly he got the idea for Star Trek from these seances. So was he tapping into the Borg already? Is there already some type of Borg out there? I mean, they show us the Cylons, Skynet. Is there already something out there that's like the Borg?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I just wrote an article about it not long ago. The South Koreans created a robot female that has emotions, and actually they took skin cells and cloned them and made a covering of this robot in human cloned skin, and they had her sitting in that she had in front of her, and nobody knew she wasn't a living being. And so that's pretty scary. And the Japanese have actually helped to create a holographic image, very much based on the Bluebeam project, which actually can be seen and felt and touched as if it was in the room with you, just like they did on Star Trek in the holodecks, where they would have these projected scenes with people and everything like that. This is current technology. And again, they're starting a desensitization program with video games that they give to children that look quite amazingly realistic, like as if they're really living beings on the screen. And so in the future, you won't know if you're sitting next to a cyborg or a real person or an alien or anything else. It's going to be really quite an interesting time.
Absolutely, and if they're talking about this stuff in the public sector, then they've got to be way advanced. The Department of Defense is going to have stuff way beyond that. I saw, as far as these drones, they're getting smaller and smaller. A friend of mine sent me a picture a couple days ago on this project that's being worked on, where they've got these mosquito drones literally the size of a mosquito, that has these little like needles on the tip that they can inject or take or extract. So it, it could inject you with a poison, with some type of medicine, or it could take your blood and extract your blood, and if it's looking for somebody or something in particular, and then clone that blood. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that I knew about a couple of years ago. In fact, the one I saw was actually, it looked like a fly. But it makes sense that they'd have a mosquito too, and that's really brilliant, And so, you're sitting outside having a barbecue in the summer, and you get stung by a mosquito. Is it a mosquito, or is it one of those little spy bugs that they've created? So, absolutely, these days you don't know what's real and what's not. What's the dream state? What's the real state? Is there a difference? And we have to really perfect our innate ability to discern energy fields and to mentally understand what is around us at all times, no matter what the circumstances are. And that's hopefully what I'm trying to teach people in many of my classes.
Sorry about that. Yeah, and that's the amazing thing about being able to use your third eye or tap into your chakras, because it will see the truth. You can't hide the truth when you're using your third eye, because it sees through all of this, these illusions that these guys can orchestrate in front of us. It's like they have, these old ninjas that would throw the smoke and then disappear and then create something else out of it. And it's just the sleight of hand trick that they're so good at. And, I'm glad, Stewart, that you are out there talking to people and helping them deprogram from these intricate, I guess, narcissistic designs that have been set in place to keep people running in circles and, following that carrot at the end of the stick, and they'll never get it. But, if you would, share with us some exercises or some ways that we could kind of get out of this, program mind construct and look for the positive ways that we can help others, instead of just worrying about how these guys are coming up with all these, psychotic, powerful ways to take control of us.
Yeah, well, the very first thing I tell people as far as that is to visualize yourself in a violet energy field that permeates and surrounds you. And violet is like an amethyst color. I know a lot of people do get mixed up between violet and purple, and they're actually two different colors. So think of an amethyst for violet, and the function of violet is for filtering and protection of energy, which is why your crown chakra is in a violet color. And so that's the very first step, and that will help block ELF. And in fact, after you put yourself in a violet color, you can put a mirror around that with the mirror facing towards the outside, so that anything coming towards that mirror is then reflected away, and anything that penetrates the mirror is then filtered by the violet. So that's a very good basic exercise for people to practice on a daily basis in order to block all of these transmissions. And another thing you can do is to center your consciousness at the pineal gland at the center of the head, which is between the left and right hemispheres of the brain, using a royal blue color, which is the color of that chakra. And there you will see mentally your T-bar, which is the balancing archetype between the left and right hemispheres of the brain. And depending on your genetics, it can look like a capital T or a small T or cross, or an Ankh shape, which is like a T with a loop on top. And what you would do is look to make sure that the crossbars are completely perpendicular and form right angles. And if they're leaning or twisted, mentally straighten them out so that they form right angles. And this will regulate the thought processes between the left and right hemispheres of the brain so that your thinking does not go to extremes. And it will also connect to the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus, thyroid, and thymus glands to regulate all of the chemical and hormonal flows of your body. Now, if for some reason you have a difficulty to see your T-bar, and that does happen when people are has heavy metal toxins or medical residue or what have you, then what you can do instead is at the pineal gland create mentally a royal blue circle with a royal blue dot in the center of that circle. Centering the dot in the circle is equal to balancing the arms of the T-bar. So these are a couple of basic techniques, or I call preliminary techniques, that people can use just right away in order to keep themselves safe and protected and balanced.
Great. Sounds like something pretty simple anybody could do, and any exercise that somebody works on, mentally or physically, the more they do it, the better they'll get at it. So, that's great. I really appreciate you sharing that with us.
Sure, and not only that, but just by using the pineal gland on a daily basis is really exercising that organ and its energy, and that will help open up the DNA in the mind as well.
Now, what are some things that you can do, that you have the abilities to do, that you can teach others as far as, can you astral project? Have you ever been able to tap into another conscience and actually, see through its eyes, feel how it feels? Stuff that you learn about in hermetics and mystery schools that's been around for thousands of years, actually longer, but, it can also be explained scientifically.
Yes, this what you just mentioned was kind of typical of what was done at the Montauk Project, but quite frankly, that's very invasive, and you really don't have permission to do all that. So that is why I go to hyperspace techniques, which uses energy from hyperspace, not from the body, and you don't have to enter into anyone else's energy field intrusively to learn anything. It can be learned directly from your own mind and your own oversoul and connection to the God mind within, without being like a spy. So there's other ways of doing all these things which are more acceptable and not intrusive to the other person. And also, whenever you are connecting to another person for any reason, you must always mentally ask permission. You can't just barge in there, just like you wouldn't barge into someone's home. You always ask permission. Well, it's the same thing energetically when you're dealing from one person to the other.
Right, absolutely, and that's a great way to put it. Your mind is your castle, so, you got to knock on the door first before you can go in. And, I know as far as out-of-body experiences go, I actually had one several years ago. As I was falling asleep, I, started floating out of my body, and it freaked me out so bad that I woke myself up. And then when I started to go back to sleep, I did it again. I woke myself up again. I walked around for a bit. And, several years ago, I had done a lot of research since then, and I actually read a book by I don't know if he's a doctor, Robert Bruce, where he has a 90-day guide to astral projection, and I practiced his steps, and I became very effective with it. It's pretty fascinating when you can kind of see yourself outside yourself like that. People that have those experiences that don't even believe in that kind of stuff will typically have them right before they fall asleep. So it's, an incredible phenomenon that many people have, and everybody does it, but not everybody remembers it. So, it's very fascinating, these different levels of reality. It's almost like we're in this holographic construct. But what is hyperspace exactly? This sounds incredible. Is it all like pictures and shapes and colors, completely different from what we look at?
Well, actually, hyperspace is a much higher level than the astral levels. And I actually, in my work, tell people to stay away from astral work, because that's, all intents and purposes, it's a bad neighborhood. At the astral levels is what the government uses for mind control transmissions. There are demonic entities. There are alien beings and reptilian beings walking around there and existing there. So it's not a safe place to be. So I teach people to go right to hyperspace, which is a much higher level than that. And that is where pure thought, pure energy transmission, the real basis of the God mind is there. And of course, the brain, or especially the left brain, has no point of reference when you come back into the body to after an experience. And so then the pineal gland kicks in and uses pictograms or archetype symbols and strings them together in a sequence, and you think it's a story, and then it's basically telling you in terms you can understand what you just experienced. But in true hyperspace work, you are, literally one with the universe, and you know all, see all, be all. Nothing can harm you there, and that's, I think, a better way of going than through the astral.
So, but I mean, to get to the astral, that's even above the real time zone. Like when you first float out of your body, you're not really in the astral realm yet. You're still in the real time zone. You're seeing what's around you. You're seeing yourself. You're seeing your walls. You're seeing your bed. And then when you project further from that, it's almost like the best way to describe it would be, for me, would be like colors and patterns. But you're saying that this hyperspace is even above that, and then it's archetypes, archetypal images that go into different sequences for stories and to resonate with that. I mean, how would one? I know you talked about some of these ways to deprogram and to protect yourself from these elf rays and stuff. I think you said, or just these negative programs. But what are ways to exercise the mind to be able to jump into hyperspace? And when they see somebody just like yourself, they can see these archetypes at the higher level to see what that person really is.
Well, the color code or the entry code for hyperspace is always royal blue, and that is based at the pineal gland, which is why that chakra is in that color. The astral layers are more of a red color entry code, and the red does go more towards the base or root chakra, so it's a very lower level energy field. And astral is more borderline physical, non-physical. It could almost seem like both at the same time, whereas hyperspace is absolutely energetic, no question about it. And each of these zones, if you want to call them, the astral, hyperspace, they all have layers or different intensities within them, depending on how deeply you go into that. But from an energy standpoint, we all exist in all of them simultaneously, and it's simply a question of where we are focusing our consciousness in order to become aware of that particular layer. So when you mention leaving your body and seeing it lying there, etc., you are starting to go into the lower astral. You're in that borderline area that can be physical, non-physical, and that is when you are the most vulnerable, because that's when the entities who are going to prey on those who are unsuspecting, that's when they swoop in and they take control of the body, or they somehow contain your soul personality so you can't go anywhere. It's really like a dangerous neighborhood, and I would urge people to avoid that and just go right to a higher level.
And and also when you do leave the body, I guess you can say you're not physically leaving it, obviously, but when you do go into that out-of-body experience, you almost feel like you're shaking. It's like a physical sensation. And I guess another way to describe it would be if you're in bed and you've got a cat at the end of the bed and it's scratching at itself or something like that, it's kind of what it feels like. The bed's kind of shaking, but there's nothing there. So is there those? Do you experience those similar feelings when you go into hyperspace, when you start to detach from the physical body, or is it more like an internal thing? I mean, do your ears ring? I notice that sometimes happens as well, or are those just not typical traits?
When you go into hyperspace, there generally are not those sensations. Though what you had just described is more associated with the astral, because when you go into the lower levels there, it's still very closely associated with the body, but the frequency is different. So it vibrates the nerves and the cochlea, and even in the irises of the eyes, so that you get these strange sounds, strange sights, strange vibrations, because you're vibrating at two different rates at the same time, and so that creates a disturbance in the body. But when you go into hyperspace, you're not connecting to the physical there. It's only energetic, non-physical, and so therefore there's no reference to physical sensations like that. So in my opinion, it's a much smoother transition and a much easier place to be and to understand things. That's I think a better way of going than taking chances in the lower levels of energy.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see why you're saying that. I mean, if you're going to be tapping into a jungle of these, dark entities, I guess you could call them, you're kind of messing with fire a little bit, literally. So, interesting, though. I've never really heard that before. So, and this hyperspace thing I find fascinating. What do some of these archetypal images look like? Can you give us a couple descriptions?
Well, there's infinite numbers of them, and in my book, Healer's Handbook, I have an extensive dictionary with different shapes. But for example, you can have a simple square, and the square, depending on the color, can represent the mouth. It can represent the physical environment. You can have a circle, again with the color, which changes the nuance. Circle represents your physical environment. It also represents unbroken timelines or energies. Represents intelligence. A line, like the small letter I, a line with a dot, represents an intelligent being. These are some of the very simple archetypes that you could see. An upside down V represents power. The diamond shape represents the crown chakra. So these are just simple exercises or images from hyperspace.
I see. And like some of these extraterrestrial entities, reptilians, grays, I know there's multiple levels of grays, at least from the research that I've done. Are they able to tap into hyperspace too?
Hyperspace is God mind. Since everything comes from God mind, everything has the ability to connect to that. So yeah, it doesn't matter whether you're have good intentions or not. You can still tap into hyperspace.
I see. And as far as I'm going to jump into some of this mind control tech again for a minute, I wanted to discuss something that I've been doing some research on with these satellites that are so sensitive they can pick up sounds, billions and billions of miles away. Are they able to, because I know when you think or you hear something or you smell something or you see something or you feel something, synapses are shooting out of your brain. So it's obviously an electric impulse. Do they have satellite technology that can actually pick up these impulses, decipher these impulses of what they are, and store them, and kind of like red flag certain individuals? So if somebody's continuing to have particular thoughts that these dungeon masters don't want them to have, these supercomputers will be able to pick that up and then send that code back to them, and then store that information so they can keep track of certain individuals.
Yes, that is true, but I will tell you that all words in any language have a frequency, so they have devices that can translate your thought waves into words, and vice versa. They can send thought waves to you that your brain translates into words. So that's how they can pick up your thoughts and even transmit thoughts. But interestingly, we're talking about electromagnetic pulses and energies, especially from the body. You will notice that a lot of our food and drinks and medications that they give out are very, very harmful to the nervous system and actually destroy the myelin sheathing or weaken it so that the electrical impulses can be scattered out. And so when we have a very weakened myelin sheathing in our nervous system, it makes the transmission or reading of the body energies easier. And so that's why they have all these toxins in the food to destroy your cells, basically, and to put heavy metals in you so that you become a walking antenna and you just pick up the transmissions anywhere you are.
Well, yeah, talking about walking antennas, what about those people that have Magellan's and then the wires literally growing out of their skin?
Yeah, Morgellons disease, that is comes from chemtrails, or did come from chemtrails, and that was part of an experiment a long time ago to see if they could create a sympathetic or artificial nervous system in human beings simply by transmitting through the grid of the chemtrails. So yes, there's been very many nefarious experiments, and they use people as guinea pigs Years ago, in the 1950s, they dropped a viral bomb over Winnipeg, Manitoba, because it was so isolated, and then they could track the flow of the virus through that population and how it spread. And they got permission from the Canadian government to do that. So things go on all the time around us that we don't know, where we are just like objects in a petri dish in a laboratory.
Well, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it clearly seems like where they look at us like cockroaches, and I've got plenty of evidence for saying that. I mean, look at the stuff they put on our food. They put freaking bug killer on our food constantly, D2, Roundup, freaking. They spray Corexit out in the Gulf. They have nuclear facilities next to fault lines. Plumes going off all the time out of these reactors, and it just seems like they clearly have no. At the top levels, they don't care about us. It's like they look at this as like this narcissistic playground for them to feed off of like pain and suffering or dark ecstasy, and it's like that's how they fill their tanks and continue to live with vitality, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm. Well, they do feed off of the energies of human beings, and that's why they promote so many sexual activities or anger and rage to occur, because those sensations, those emotions really beam off the energies from the body, and that could be easily downloaded and stored and even amplified. So that's why there's so much pornography, and that's why there's road rage, and they anger people with the news media and all that kind of thing, because they're trying to create a condition where we exude intense energies and emotions that can be downloaded and used.
Literally downloaded and used. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes absolute sense. You create all this freaking negativity or whatever, this storable energy, and similar to the way I guess we could store solar power from the solar panel cells, then you can do the same thing at these higher levels. They've got this incredible technology to literally harness it. And, it just reminds me of the Matrix again, man. Like they're, hooking everybody up into these vats and like sucking the adrenaline and the body fluids and just every extra synapse that comes out of that person, find a way to use it to their advantage. I mean, it's absolutely incredible times we live in, Stewart. It really is fascinating. But, I mean, what was you go back pre-times like Atlantean times, and you look at the yugas or the different cycles throughout history, and clearly evolution isn't linear. We've gone through these cycles. We've been way further advanced than what we look at now. What is it going to take for us to get back to that level? Is there going to have to be a giant cleansing? Are the Georgia Guidestones going to have to come true, and there can only be 500 million people on the earth at any given time to get to this enlightened state?
Well, I teach that humanity as a species is a victimization mind pattern. And when you have that mind pattern, you attract tyrants and oppressors because that's what you're projecting out as a reflection. So if humanity will remove those mind patterns, then the Illuminati cannot have that power over us any longer. That again, I go back to release work, deprogramming, protection techniques. All these things are so important on a daily basis because we need to change the way we think. And I use the analogy that thoughts are like film, the brain is the projector, and physical reality is the screen. So if you don't like the movie that's playing around you, you need to change the film, which is the way you think. So we need to become monitors of our own thinking processes and get rid of the ones that are no longer serving and put in new ones that are beneficial to us and that we create for ourselves.
Wow, yeah, what a great way to put it. This sounds just like what Gandhi said, be the change in yourself that you want to see in the world. And that really makes a good point. Quit pointing fingers at everything that's going wrong in the world unless you're ready to do something about it and actually make a difference and not be a part of the problem. Absolutely. Well, let's get into another subject now, Stewart. I heard you talk about Nibiru before, and I think you were saying that it was actually destroyed. Is that correct?
Yes, it was destroyed in April 2003. Actually, excuse me, it was destroyed in March. No, it was destroyed in April 2003. March is when 2003 we invaded Iraq. And under Baghdad were the stargates that the Nibiruans were going to transfer into. And so they invaded Iraq, got control of the stargates, destroyed Nibiru, and that was the end of that story.
Well, now, I mean, that's obviously this sounds some extremely wild claims. So let's just, for our skeptics out there, how were they able to destroy a planet the size of Nibiru?
Well, they used the particle beam accelerator that they had in a spaceship that was orbiting Jupiter. And as Nibiru came close to Jupiter, they transmitted the particle beam accelerator weapon and basically undermined the structural integrity of Nibiru. And ever since then, if you ever look at the NASA sun cam, or the camera that they always have on the sun, there have been huge chunks of something flying into the sun for several years in a row. And we also had here on Earth many surprise visits by meteorites that seem to have flown by suddenly and no one saw them coming. There's been a lot of space debris coming from that area headed towards the Earth and the sun, which are the remnants of Nibiru. So, I mean, of course, no one has to believe me. They can accept or reject whatever they wish, but I just say what I know, and then you can decide for yourself.
Well, I'll say this. I know that if you look at the artificial moons of Saturn, look at the high-resolution photographs from NASA's own satellites of Iapetus, of Mimas, and now there's another one around Saturn I can't remember the name of, but Iapetus and Mimas look identical to the Death Star in Star Wars. And as far as the particle accelerators you're talking about, if you look at the circumference of Iapetus, you'll see this 12-mile high, 12-mile ridge that goes around the circumference of this 800 or 900 mile wide moon, and then above it you've got this giant octagon, which looks very similar to the circle in the Death Star where that beam shoots out, and it looks similar to the CERN type technology they're using here on Earth.
That's exactly correct, and CERN is in the process of trying to collapse alternate realities into this one where the Illuminati are already in power. And isn't it interesting that the Vatican has an office at CERN? And I actually went there a year ago in June 2011, and the energy is quite amazing, and there's a dampening field over the whole area, even over most of Geneva, that it really deadens the minds of the people there and makes them very hostile. It was a very difficult experience. But you're correct about Saturn. You see, back in the early 90s, you remember the string of pearls, the comet that broke into 22 pieces and made right-angle turns and then crashed into Jupiter. And that we were told that was a natural event. But in effect, what was happening is they were trying to test to see if a giant gas planet like Jupiter could be ignited into a star. And it was successful, and so that is why the red spot on Jupiter has changed, and the color and brightness of Jupiter has changed, because the chemical components are now different, although it has not completely ignited. Once they were successful, the real target was Saturn. And, Saturn equals Satan, and that is what is in front of CERN. It is all about creating a second sun in our solar system, because the Illuminati are fascinated by twinning and binary star systems. And this will create all those moons around Saturn to become very livable Earth-like environments as Saturn becomes a sun. And then they become colonizable, and that will enhance the idea that the Illuminati have of creating a galactic empire with the Earth as its capital, and then fan out from here into the rest of the galaxy. We exist, our solar system is at a point on one of the spiral arms of the Milky Way galaxy. So if you want to control a galaxy of that shape, the most logical thing you can do is control or occupy all of the points, and then in effect you've surrounded the whole thing, and you can take your time working your way in.
Wow. You know, this reminds me of William Bell out of the TV series Fringe, where there's a lot of actual science in that TV series. It's fringe science. It's really far cutting-edge stuff. But in one of the episodes, William Bell, which is the original Spock from Star Trek, he is creating. He's taking two universes, the universe we're in now and the doppelganger universe, and he's molding them together, but in doing so, it destroys both of those universes and it creates a new universe so that he can be the complete ruler over this new universe, you know. And he's doing this transhumanistic thing where he's integrating, and he's modifying animals to make it more perfect in his eyes and stuff like that. So he's got this total God complex, and that sounds exactly like what you're talking about. And then when you talk about this, CERN being used to collapse, I think you were saying galaxies or something like that, or like
alternate realities.
I mean, that's fascinating. I mean, can you imagine that kind of power to be able to completely destroy entire solar systems? I mean, that just boggles the mind. And if anybody's seen the book Ringmakers of Saturn, there's some excellent photographic evidence of these just giant-looking spaceships. They look like rods, and it looks like they're doing some type of either mining or adjustments on the rings of Saturn, like these rings are used to some type of beacon, some type of like communication or something to resonate frequencies out into this particular solar system. This is really fun. Awesome stuff, Stewart. I'm just curious, though, as far as a lot of these objects that have gone into the sun that you're talking about, some of them almost look like spaceships, like they're going in and they're like harvesting the energy, and then like I saw this one the other day that looked like it was sucking energy out of the sun from a SOHO image. I mean, this is all speculative, but these just huge objects that are next to the sun look like they're moving around and stuff. So now, are there spacecraft too that can like literally go through these suns and like harvest the energy so they can continue to have an energy source, or do they even need to do that?
Okay, now this is now a completely different topic. Let me just remind the audience that what I was talking about earlier was the debris from Nibiru that was flying into the sun. Now, what you're talking about, and which has been shown even on conventional news and websites, are these huge objects that are coming out of the sun, apparently, and moving out into the depths of our solar system. Now, those of you out there who may have reviewed or been to my class on simultaneous existences, I talk about how a black hole in one universe is a star in a parallel universe, so that you enter into one and it goes out into the other, and vice versa. And that is how all the alternate realities breathe in and out, so to speak, and maintain energy flow between the two, is through black holes and stars. And so what you're seeing there are vehicles that have entered a black hole in an alternate or another universe and have exited through our star in this universe. And that's what we're seeing. And these so-called energy manipulations, or looks like you said sucking energy out or doing something, that's really happening there is they're preparing frequency pathways for other vehicles to come through so that they enter into a specific spot when they exit the sun. That's what's going on. But there's a whole other topic which, to talk about, and that's the Kuiper Belt, which is the energy area that surrounds our solar system, kind of like an eggshell, and we are the yolk and the Kuiper Belt is the eggshell. And since 2007 or so, NASA has been noticing objects appear almost on a daily basis there. And in fact, it became so suspicious and people got so interested in the topic that's when, if you remember, they decided to change Pluto into a Kuiper Belt object. And they say, well, yes, they've been there all along, and even Pluto is one of those objects. It's not even a planet. So, at this point, we don't even know what the classification of Pluto is anymore, if it's a planet or a Kuiper Belt object or a planetoid or all the other names they've given it. That's just a cover story to direct attention elsewhere. But I will say, and I always talk about a staged alien invasion that the Illuminati are planning very soon. But my opinion, there's something massing out there in the Kuiper Belt that may constitute a real invasion. And, no one really spoke about the Kuiper Belt for a number of years. I was the only one talking about it like that. Then all of a sudden, on CNN and BBC and Fox News, they started talking about how some strange energy from the Kuiper Belt was blocking the Pioneer spacecraft as it was passing by Mars going towards Jupiter, and was blocking its movement. And then they were saying Kuiper Belt energy was bombarding the Earth. And so little by little they start to reveal things. Now they're saying there's this big object that's hurling meteors and comets at the Earth from the Kuiper Belt. So all of the things that I've been telling about there on my website, for which I have been ridiculed a lot out there, but now the conventional media is talking about it. So we need to keep our eye on what's going on in the Kuiper Belt, because in my opinion, that will be the real source of any invasion of this planet.
Well, okay, and we were talking earlier about how Nibiru was destroyed. We went into Iraq. We got the Stargate down there. So these okay, so the Illuminati are the reptilians, right? And those are the ones that are declaring the wars, and those are the ones that took out Nibiru. I just want to make sure I've got this straight.
Well, the Illuminati did that, but I won't call them reptilian because they're hybrid just like we are. It's just they have a higher percentage of reptilian DNA.
Okay. So like I know somebody that's got Rh negative blood, and she's like the third cousin from the Queen, supposedly. So is it true what they say about people with Rh negative blood, they have more of this reptilian DNA?
If you have Rh negative blood, that means you have a higher percentage of reptilian DNA. That's correct. But the good side is you're probably a healthier person, because reptilian blood is more copper-based and can hold more oxygen and is more disease-resistant.
And I know that a lot of people that I've talked to that have this type of blood, like one in particular, she actually both of them had to go through these mercury injections, and all these different injections, because when they were pregnant. And one of the people I'm talking about, her son has really bad autism, which is probably from all the freaking mercury and thimerosal that they were injecting her with when she was pregnant, and it probably caused some brain damage. The other person's son is okay. But why is that? Why do they inject people, with Rh negative blood if they're pregnant? Why do they inject them with all those mercury shots?
Well, they're injecting everybody with those heavy metals, and they're putting it in food.
More so, this was an extra program that these people had to go through. In particular, when they were pregnant, they had to get these extra mercury shots.
Listen, what they're trying to do generally is, you notice there's been a 300% increase in autism, and the reason. Yeah, and the reason is autistic people are not mentally ill or deficient. They have a higher percentage of dolphin DNA, which is a remnant of the Atlantean hybridization programs in ancient times. And since dolphins are a higher intelligence than humanity, anyone who has that DNA active in them becomes a threat. And so in order to curb that threat, they have to damage those people so that they don't open up their full potential.
That makes perfect sense. And that's why they put fluoride in the water. That's why they put all these GMO foods in the corporate-sponsored boxes that look pretty and local. And so they've got to dumb people down, the population down. So that makes sense. And, so they're like a reptilian hybrids. We all have a certain percentage of reptilian DNA. That makes sense. That explains the reptilian part of our brain and the fight or flight mode that's so easy to control. So I'm following you. Now, as far as the pharaohs and pre-Egyptian times, let's maybe go back 20, 30,000 years. was it like, were there real like reptilians walking around, like full-on 7-foot, reptilian bodies, or were they still all humanoid just like us?
No, in those days, in those ancient times, especially in the high courts of ancient Egypt and Sumer, etc., yes, there were full-blooded reptilians walking around. They were considered to be, from the other side of the river, Styx River, and holy beings. And, there were a lot of hybrid creatures left over from Atlantean times that were also part of these religious hierarchies in ancient Egypt. And this is found all over the world, actually. So, yeah, they were more understood, more accepted then. But now we've been so far removed from those days that that's frightening to human beings. So the Illuminati have to recondition humanity to accept the appearances again.
Wow, yeah, I mean, that's fascinating. I remember seeing a statue, it was like an old Sumerian statue, and it looked like a giant reptilian dude that was holding something. Mm-hmm. And I've seen petroglyphs of what looked like grays, in the Cheops pyramid, I think it was. There's another one with looked like a UFO craft, one looked like a Jetsons car. So, clearly what they tell us in school and the history that, we're taught to believe is so dull in comparison to what really happened. And that would also make sense when you're talking about these programs. They come up with these programs to make us think we're really not that great. It was actually all alien technology that made these pyramids. We had nothing to do with it. So they're way better than us. And I feel like that kind of creates this, imprisonment of the mind and makes people feel like they're really not that capable of these extraterrestrials. Like they've got all these greater powers when, from the research that I've done, I don't know if you're familiar with the Gnostic treaties, the Nag Hammadi texts, like the Secret Book of John. There's lots of these archons, these archonic beings that were around way longer than even the planets. They were created when kind of the universe was created as an anomaly. And they sound like very similar to the Borg almost, like this artificial entity that tries to mimic life, but they actually help create life. So the Anunnaki, the Archons, I'm wondering if they're all, one in the same. But what are your thoughts on, so you firmly believe that us as we are now, we were actually created by the pre-human history combined with an off-world source or off-world entity?
And that's why it says in the book of Genesis, let us make man in our image. It's plural.
That.
It's all plural. And in fact, all references in Aramaic and Hebrew in the Old Testament are plural. There's not one singular for God. They're all plural. So who is this we, us, our? And when you look at history, I read my Blue Blood book, this is when the reptilians and the humans decided to create humanity as a third race, a synthesis to create a peace between them. And that's why if you look at how a fetus develops in utero, for the first 6 to 8 weeks, it is a reptilian androgynous creature. And only after that do mammalian genes open up and sexual differentiation occur. So the genetics are following the sequence in which they were placed. And the reptilian DNA was first, and then the mammalian genetics were added quite clearly, and how human beings are gestated in the womb.
Wow, absolutely fascinating. This is incredible. I'm trying to grasp my mind around all this right now. I mean, it's just like, so, and really, with our DNA and the way that we're created, if we can learn particular thought patterns and processes, we can actually, unlock certain things. I find that to be the most useful, realistically. I mean, we could all become like X-Men pretty much, and without having to be hooked up to some brain chip. And I see that's how these dungeon masters are pushing it. It's going to be good for you. You're going to get all these abilities. You're going to be able to do everything easier and faster. You can open your garage door just by thinking it. You can call your friends just by thinking it. And it's going to be the next cool thing. And then, I'm going even more into this, Stewart, and if this really does get implemented like they want, this transhuman thing, so they can turn us into the Borg, so they can control us more, then it's going to be even more difficult for people to break out of. And it seems as if they've already created this system to just, suck all this energy out of people. So it's clearly fascinating stuff. Man, absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and I know it's a lot for people to take in, especially if they haven't heard these ideas before. But I suggest that people do their own research and find out for themselves, so they don't just take my word for it, and then they can see the truth for their own selves.
Well, and as far as the Anunnaki goes, some people say they came from Nibiru. Some people say there were, multitudes of species that you had, the mantises and Nordics and reptilian type extraterrestrials or beings, I should say. So is that true? I mean, was it a whole bunch of different, species from different star constellations, or was it just one particular race?
No, there were many different races that came here, but the Anunnaki themselves were from Nibiru, and they were a reptilian-like race. They weren't exactly like the reptilians of the Draco star system, but they were reptilian-like. And in our Milky Galaxy, 25% of the population is reptilian-based, and 70% is more humanoid.
Okay. And so when the Anunnaki came here from Nibiru, and if you believe Zachariah Stitchin's translations, they made man basically. But whether you believe they made him for gold or for more nefarious purposes, are those same people or the same individuals that came here and did that, are they still in power, and are those the ones that actually blew up Nibiru? Well,
yes, they are still in power. And they've been in power really since the Sumerian times. And they've morphed from one type of control system to another. But now, the idea that they have is that the best way to have a slave is to make them think they're not a slave. Then there's no resistance. And that's what we're seeing now. The false empowering, the mind control, or the alters that come forward to make you think you're one thing instead of another. It's a very complicated system, and believe it or not, the Illuminati have a lot of fear, and that's why they need to use mind control so that the society stays in a direction in which it's steered instead of going off in its own direction.
Okay. And I've just got one more question, and then I'm going to turn it over to Isis, because we've got a ton of questions from our auditorium. We've got a huge audience tonight. The question is about these beings, I guess, or these extraterrestrials that you say are out there in the possibly in the Cuniper Belt.
Kuiper.
Correctly? I'm sorry. Okay. So are they reptilians as well? Like, are reptilian beings, are they the same ones that were part of this and they kind of broke off a long time ago? Or is that like a completely different species, like a whole new level?
It's more than one species. In fact, it's quite a number. It's a conglomerate of many, many, many groups, most of which have never been seen before. However, the very rare times anyone's been able to tap into it, many of them are very insect-like.
Like mantises?
Well, some have reported more like ants, wasps, even bee-type creatures, very insect-like. And we don't know if that's just like the warrior group, the front guard, or if they're the intelligence behind it. But there are many, many, many types there, and again, kinds that we have never seen before.
Well, it sounds like they could be like biologically created, army bots. I mean, with beings that have that kind of technology, they could decide, okay, we want to create this particular entity to go after these people, and it's going to look like a gigantic ant with 70 times the strength of a human being and X-ray eyes and stuff. That's pretty awesome, man.
All we really know is that they are against the Illuminati, but that doesn't mean that they have human best interest in mind. It just means they don't like the Illuminati. So we could go from one control system to another control system.
Right, and they could be even worse. I mean, they could literally plug us into those same things we're plugging chickens into now that are genetically modified blind, so that they won't be as upset when they're hooked up to feeding tubes before, for their whole life before they get slaughtered. Wow, Stewart, this is incredible, man. I'm going to turn the mic over now to Isis because we've just got a ton of questions.
Okay.
Okay, are you ready to roll on these?
Yeah, why not? Let's go.
Okay. Bad Hair Day would like to know, does Stewart see emotions at all?
I can see the energy of the emotions because they have color.
Okay. He would also like to know, let's see, he says, I am keen to know if Stewart knows about recent Draco influence in China and the GOM, which is the Gulf of Mexico for that matter.
Well, very interesting question. I have actually a very close connection to China and the elite in China. And I will tell you, now this is interesting, and I want to qualify all of this. The Chinese elite are more closely associated with the white-winged dragon energy, which is a bit, well, it's quite a lot higher level than the Draco. In fact, the Draco worship those higher level beings. So yes, the Chinese definitely have a connection to that. But the Chinese, unfortunately, are also controlled by Windsor family of the Illuminati. So there's a lot of conflict within China, which is why they do the things that they do. As far as the Gulf of Mexico is concerned, I don't know if the person is referring to the Gulf oil spill, but that was a global ritual which was literally designed to make the earth bleed to death.
Wow. Okay. Well, back to China. He also wants to know if you know anything about the discovery under the Great Wall.
Well, there's been a lot of things under the Great Wall, but he needs to be specific.
We had a briefcase thread that where briefcases were sent out to certain countries some time ago. I think that's what he's referring to. From something discovered under the Great Wall.
Well, see, again, there's a lot of stuff going on under the Great Wall. There are Chinese installations. There were ancient alien artifacts. There is a tube system, which actually the Great Wall outlined when it was being built. There's a, so I don't know which specific item is referencing.
Okay. Now we have Watch Now. And he would like to ask about Australia and any information that you might be privy to that they are unaware of.
Well, as I mentioned, Australia is the largest remnant of water. There are vast underground caverns and tunnel systems in Australia, and in fact in the central part of Australia, in the southern part of the state of the Northern Territory, the U.S. has a base called Pine Gap, where there is a stargate that connects that area to the Mars underground. In recent weeks, it's been announced that the U.S. is also going to be putting military bases across Australia, and the official reason is so that they can watch Al-Qaeda in Indonesia and other, Chinese influences in Southeast Asia. However, that's only part of the truth. They're also going to be using Australia as part of the Blue Beam project for the staged alien invasion and the staged Second Coming of Christ by testing certain equipment in the ionosphere and showing meteors, UFOs, holy figure images, that kind of thing. So Australia's for new or end times programming, I'll put it that way.
Okay, great. Back to Bad Hair Day. By the way, I'm asking these for the most part as they came in, all right?
Okay, sure.
So
no
we'll be
problem.
bouncing from people back and forth. Okay, if programming occurs via ELF transmissions at night and humans are regulated by the Schumann resonance, what happens when Gaia changes frequency and it expands?
With all due respect, this information is very new agey and really isn't accurate. The Schumann resonance, as the person is referring to, really is not what it's been made out to be. ELF, I mentioned between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m., but that's not the only time. That's just when it's the heaviest influence. There's 24/7 bombardment of the Earth. You could be going about your business in the day, having lunch, going shopping, and you're being programmed at the same time. Because the carrier waves piggyback on your brain waves and embed themselves in your mind pattern. So basically, all the things mentioned in that question, in a way, aren't, how shall I say it, accurate as far as their implications, because human beings have to learn how to protect themselves. That's why I mentioned the use of violet and the frequency of violet. Nothing will get through that. So protect yourselves with ultimate protection techniques, which are in the body of my work, and use a violet color to do so.
And the mirror.
And yes.
Facing outward. Yes.
Yeah, and there's many other techniques as well that people can learn.
Pro 5 would like to know if you can talk about the Archeons and the Jesuits, please.
You mean the Jesuits?
Yeah, I think she meant the Jesuits and the Archons.
And the Archons.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's like, put those two together in one sentence. That's interesting. Well, they're two different groups. I know before it was described what the Archons were, and basically they are original super beings, the ones that the Greeks spoke about, in Mount Olympus, that kind of thing. They embody entire traits and characteristics of the God mind as a persona, and that was one of the initial conscious beings that existed in physical reality, and they're very rare, but they are immortal. And they do have their own agenda, but it's still, they usually just sit and watch, not so much interfere. As far as the Jesuits are concerned, well, that's the real power behind the Catholic Church, and also you can consider them the military arm of the Illuminati. They have what is called a Black Pope, or their own leader, who the conventional Pope reports to, and also based in the Vatican. And there's a lot of sexual ritual, sacrifice ritual, astral invocations. They really are not as spiritual as they're making themselves out to be. They're quite an aggressive, violent, manipulative, and controlling group. I don't know what else I could possibly say about that.
Wow. Okay. Bad Hair Day would like to know, is this the beginning of disclosure?
Well, again, another New Age term. They're never going to disclose the truth. As long as the Illuminati are in power, the only disclosure you're going to get is what they want you to know in the way they want you to know it. So, no, there's no real disclosure. There's the Freedom of Information Act, where you get pages blacked out. There's only 3 words left on the page. And then you have, the secret intelligence is releasing all their UFO files, except they say absolutely nothing you didn't know already. So it's just a big farce, and people think they're getting somewhere, and they're not.
Okay. Also for Bad Hair Day, can you connect to the planet as an entity? Do you think that planets are entities, and do they talk?
Okay, everything has consciousness. Rock has consciousness. The planet has a consciousness. Yes, the planet can communicate way that we would associate with language. The planet communicates with frequency fields, with energies, and with weather, and earthquakes, and that kind of thing. That's how it expresses itself. And we can tap into that and become aware of what it's communicating, but it's not a being like we would think of in conventional terms. It has a consciousness, minerals, etc., the gestalt of all the life that's on the planet.
Okay, thank you. We'd also like to know, did anyone survive Nibiru then? We killed a whole civilization and a living planet. He says that's not very nice. Bad vibes, karma going to get us?
Well, yeah.
There's more to Nibiru. Was Nibiru in our realm, or was it in another dimension?
No, it was in our physical realm, in the 3D. Correct, it was not a very nice thing to do, but the Draco and the Nibiruans are mortal enemies. They despise each other. And yes, there were survivors, and I'm glad that someone asked that question, because from what I understand, some of the survivors were taken to the Kuiper Belt, where they are working with those who are plotting against the Illuminati. So yes, there were survivors, but also please realize that Nibiru was not a natural object either. It was a planet-sized vehicle that actually comes from another galaxy, and had an agenda as well. So, unfortunately, despite what the New Age says about aliens, they are not love, light, and peace. In fact, they're quite the opposite, all of them. They have an agenda. And the ones who really are love, light, and peace don't interfere, so we don't see them. They keep a distance because they know that the only way for us to learn is to go through these experiences, and if they interfere, they take away our learning, and then we go back to square one.
Wow. Bad Hair Day would like to know, would two suns change the frequencies we need to survive or exist?
Actually not, believe it or not, because in our galaxy, binary star systems are more normal than singular ones, believe it or not. And the energies are localized. And what people don't understand is the sun is not hot. It's like a cold light that then broadcasts out, and it is the refraction of the light within an atmosphere and the water on the ground that creates the heat. That's why when you're in an airplane and it's 100 degrees on the ground and you take off, well, it goes below zero. You're going closer to the sun, but it's getting colder. And then when you go into deep space, it's hundreds of degrees below zero. How can that be if the sun is hot? The sun is cold light. It is not hot, and it is only the reflection within an atmosphere that creates the heat at the surface level.
Okay, thank you. Bad Hair Day would like to know, what does he think about the pyramids, and were they created, or what were they created to do?
Well, which one? There's hundreds and hundreds of pyramids all over the world, each with different purposes. Some were meant to be sacrificial areas. Some were meant to be storage units. Some were meant to be energizers. Some were meant to be interdimensional portals. Pick one. There's so many different purposes for them. It's like saying, New York City has office buildings. So what are they for? Well, what is each one for? You have to look at what's in there. I can't give a general answer, but they definitely are based on hyperspace principles of archetype, color, and vibration.
Thank you. Unfunk would like to know what you think about Kessler syndrome, if possible.
Kessler syndrome. Well, I'll tell you the truth, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay. Indigo Girl would like to know, did you go over the connections with Pleiades?
Can you repeat that? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Did you talk about Pleiades already? She's wondering what you know about them.
I don't.
Pleiadians?
You mean the Pleiadians? Is that what you mean?
Well,
Pretty sure that's what
I
she meant.
pronounced what she said, but that may be what Indigo Girl meant.
Yeah. Well, if she's talking about Pleiadians, well, again, it's a very complex topic because the U.S. government has created a new age category, which is basically mind control and programming, where you channel Pleiadians that give love, light, and peace information when in fact it's coming from a satellite transmission. The real Pleiadian star system is actually younger than our own solar system and had no life originating there. It's just too new of a star system. So all those who are there are colonists from elsewhere. And many of them do not have, again, interest at heart. Years ago at Montauk, I learned that many of the Pleiadian colonies were in association with the reptilians. So you know, you have to be careful with that category of information because it is not what it appears to be on the surface.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned earlier about words producing vibrations, and our language is set up in a way that it produces a lot of negative energy with some words such as no and no, K-N-O-W as well. And what I'd like to know is if you have some suggestions that we are able to do to get a more positive vibration as to understanding knowledge.
Very good question. So like words that are synonyms that sound alike but actually spelled differently, so they have a different vibration. And here again, if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's a question of intention of the mind pattern. So you might speak the words that sound similar, but it's the frequency of the mind behind it that's giving the actual energy to the word. And that is why when people do certain ritual work, when the Illuminati do, they use ancient language, which is very specific, and there's no question about the meanings or vibrations of those words. So you know, we just have to be aware of what we say and how we pronounce things as well. So very often when you hear someone speak a word with a different accent, it actually changes the frequency of the word because it's not the original energy of it.
Okay, thank you. I think it is so awesome how you explain the black hole and the sun. When I first viewed Google Earth, I got the impression that it was like a huge road map up in the heavens, and that the stars are like intersections where they have variations in the heights and the colorations, and these like direct the traffic through them, and as they go through, they are energized to move quickly toward the direction of their destiny. Was that like anywhere close to how it actually works?
Well, I guess you know, maybe putting it in more simple terms, what you're feeling from the stars or the sun are the conglomerate of all of the alternate realities passing through that particular star, and you're feeling that overwhelming energy, which is more than just the light. It's the totality of everything coming through it. So in that sense, it is a cross-section, or crossroads as you term. And then what you need to do is decide, okay, what am I going to do with this energy? Now that I have it, how do I direct it? So that's what people need to do mentally, is take all that energy and direct it where they need it to go or want it to go.
Great. Thank you for that. Watch Now would like you to explain the subconscious.
Oh, just one question. Tell me everything you know about everything. Well, that's a huge topic. And, you know, our brain has sections. The left brain is connected to the conscious mind, the pineal gland is the subconscious mind, and the right brain is the superconscious mind. And so basically, the subconscious mind connects as a liaison between the physical and non-physical existences, and it is the focal point through which we can manifest by mixing our logic with our spiritual energy to create the third point on the triangle, if you will. That's our thought patterns. That's kind of a bottom line of the subconscious.
Okay, thank you. Well, that concludes our questions that I have tonight. I'd like to turn the mic back over to 23 now.
Great. Thanks a lot, Isis. Those are some awesome questions. Excellent questions. You know, Stewart, I just really have a couple more questions I wanted to touch on. I know this time has just gone by so dang fast. I wish I could pick your brain for 24 hours, man. Incredible stuff. But it's one of the things that I've always noticed about Egypt and the way that they kind of represent the sun as either like a stargate or a force of energy or something. But when you read like the New Testament in the Bible, the way that it portrays Jesus, it actually reminds me of the sun of the solar system, not the sun of the divine providence of the Most High, but his birth date. There's a particular passage where it says, the only way to the Father is through me. And if you, metaphorically speaking, if you look at the Father as this higher dimension, and me meaning the Son, because they represent Jesus Christ as the Son, could it be that's hidden knowledge where, hiding in plain sight, really, the way that we're going to get to this higher dimension after we pass is through the sun, like a stargate. Like we have to focus our energies or whatever, literally blast off, through this portal in order to get to this higher dimension. And it seems like they keep the majority of the masses in this perpetual prison of, love, hate, good, bad, up, down, left, right duality. And they use religion and the Bible to construct this prison so people will never be able to leave.
Well, that's really well put. That's exactly correct, everything that you said.
Awesome. And that's clearly what I see. And it was really difficult for me. I was raised Christian, and I had to kind of break out of that paradigm. And I've always been a conspiracy theorist. I've always thought to myself, seen things that when I was 13 years old, I was telling people about the, Cydonia and the big giant Sphinx on Mars, and people told me I was crazy. Yet now you can look at the photographs and see that you can actually overlap the city of Cydonia perfectly over Washington, D.C., because it's built on the same geometry. So I guess the same education of this knowledge of geometry and being able to construct certain buildings and locations at certain places to harness the natural energy lines of the planets and of the solar system, it's done for a certain reason, and it's very fascinating. But as far as the Egyptians go, that's fascinating. And another thing I wanted to talk to you about was the moon. Clearly you feel the same way I do about it being an artificial structure. And I watched the movie Apollo 18, which made me think about previously, before that, I had read some material where they brought back multiple rocks, and they were like a titanium alloy from the moon, and they had brain cells in them. And I'm trying to figure out to myself, why the hell are there brain cells in titanium alloy rocks from the moon? And then, after thinking about that movie that I watched, where like literally the whole of the, when I say whole, I'm referring to the outer shell of the moon, this, structure was actually like a complete integration of not only biology, where like if you watch the movie, people get infected with this dust and then it overtakes them from inside. I'm wondering if there's like an integration of biology and machine with the outside of the moon being like a security system, where if somebody's trying to break in, it will actually, turn into whatever it needs to take that person out. Because I've also seen photographs of what look like giant spiders on the moon, but not actual real spiders, but looks like some type of crane machine, like some massive machine. And I'm sure people have seen the light and the tower on the moon, and just all these incredible anomalies that have done any research. This stuff's been around a long time. But do you think there's a connection there? Is there possibly some type of like nano-infused technology with biology, and they can harness it with like Wi-Fi or something?
Well, actually, what they do is the objects that they use to travel are connected to their brain energetically, so that they actually think the motion and direction they want the object to go in, and then the object responds because it's an extension of their brain energy. So yes, there is an interface like that. And many reports of UFOs that the government has retrieved shows that they're actually more like living objects than material objects. They actually interface with the brain. So the other thing is, it's been proven that the moon rocks, and you're right, they're much older than the Earth, but they're not from our solar system. There are no materials in our solar system that match the material on the moon. So, of course, the big cover story was that the moon was flying past us one day and the Earth's gravitational field just captured it. I mean, it's kind of true, but it was done under intelligent control. So yes, there's a lot to the moon than they're telling everybody.
Wow. Wow, and that kind of makes me wonder, too, and another guest we had on here, I don't know if you've heard of him, Daryl Sims. He calls himself the Alien Hunter, and he actually says he's been abducted multiple times, so does his family members. He actually has microchips that came from the center of his, like, behind his nose, basically, the navel cavity there. And anyway, he claims that, you know, a lot of these extraterrestrials, same as you, like the, you know, these different gray classes and these Nordics and like literally the Wookiee or the, you know, some of these Bigfoots are actually cloned. And he says that they're cloned in these, you know, giant spaceships that he's seen pictures of. He also used to be a CIA agent back, I think, in the 70s or something like that. I don't remember. But anyway, I wonder if the moon, if, you know, if this is all true, if this is where they could actually be doing a lot of the cloning and a lot of the genetic engineering and the manipulation and, you know, the abductions and stuff like that, if that could actually be like a station for them to be producing these clones or these people or beings.
Well, I know the government here, you know, they clone in many different places. You know, the moon is basically a giant ship, and there's many facilities on there for many different purposes. And yes, they can clone on the moon too, but it's not the only place. There are many places on the planet that they do that as well.
Right, like all these underground bases, underground cities. Yeah, now is there actually a center of the Earth? I mean, is there like a livable space under there where you've got, and I'm not talking about the catacombs and the giant tunnel systems and the huge bunkers that trillions and trillions of dollars has gone into, but I'm actually talking, is there like a central light source, and is there like, you know, an actual ecosystem within the planet?
Yeah, the Earth is hollow, and many planets that are created this way are hollow. When molten material is ejected from a star, it's thrown into space and it spins in the coldness of space. And as it spins, it cools, and the outer surface hardens into an outer crust. But then inside, the centrifugal force causes the molten material to go to the sides and pushes out the extra material through openings that become polar openings. And then the inside starts to cool and harden. So you have an inner mantle and an outer mantle. And because of the gravitational energies that are created by the spin, there is molten material that's left suspended in the middle that could be considered like an inner sun. And that's really the source of the aurora borealis, by the way. And so, yeah, there is, and then there are caverns that connect between the inner and outer mantles. So there's a whole bunch of ecosystems inside the Earth.
Wow. And just one more question I want to ask before we close, and it's in regards to the planets and the suns and the stars of the, you know, the universe and the galaxies and the cosmos. I've talked to people that are heavily into astro shamanism. I myself have done research on astro shamanism, where it's basically like each planet has its own energy source, its own consciousness. And when you were talking earlier about Saturn, Satan, I've often too wondered about that connection. And you know, because I know that Gnostic texts also speak about the archons, many of them coming from Saturn, and you look at all the anomalies around there. It's just fascinating. It's like Star Trek on steroids. But it's just I'm trying to remember where I'm going with this. I kind of lost track, but I'm trying to figure out if, dang it, I just got hit by a harp beam and it completely blanked my memory, Stewart. This is absolutely terrible. I need to get back under my Faraday cage here. I completely forgot where I was going with this, man.
Yeah.
Dang
well, you can always email me another time.
Okay. Well, it's been an absolute incredible show. I really appreciate you making it out here tonight with us. I'd like to promote your website one more time. It's expansions.com. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And is there anything else that you would like to share with us before we close out tonight?
Well, I'm leaving on Sunday for L.A., so anyone in L.A. wants to see me next week, just contact us at expansions.com, and we can make that arrangement. So we have a lot of events coming up, and in September, our 10th annual conference will feature David Icke and Dr. Osmanagic, the discoverer of the Bosnian Pyramid, so come and join us.
Great. I appreciate that. And actually, I do remember where I was going with that. I just got back under my Faraday cage, so the mind control isn't working for these guys anymore. I can actually think for myself again. Do you believe that the planets and the stars of the solar system all actually have their own consciousness, and similar to you and I?
They have consciousness, but it is not equal to human consciousness. It is a mineral consciousness, which is a bit different.
Okay, so we are actually still far greater than the planet. That's not the next level. That's actually underneath us then.
Oh, actually, the planet responds to the group species mind pattern, and so it reacts to us.
Okay. Wonderful. That makes sense.
Could I interject for just a minute? I skipped a question. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Ursham asks, which of your books are the best to start with?
Well, if you want to learn about history, you should get the Blue Blood, True Blood book and my new one coming out, True World History. If you're interested in healing techniques and hyperspace, then you should get the Healer's Handbook and Hyperspace Helper. If you're interested in mind control and programming, there's True Reality of Sexuality and 13 Cubed. And if you're interested in oversoul work, there's Decoding Your Life and 1,099 Affirmations. So there's, go online, go to expansions.com, look at all the books and DVDs, and depending on the topics, you can choose the ones that best fit your needs.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Great. Well, Stewart, this has been one of the greatest interviews I've ever had a chance to do. I really appreciate you coming on here and answering these questions for us. Please stick around with us for a second after the close. And that said, I'm going to turn the mic over to Tim.
Thanks, 23. GLPVC's Raw Feed would like to thank our guest, Stewart Swerdlow, for sharing with us his knowledge and information into Illuminati mind control and mind patterns. Check out his books, workshops, and videos at his site, expansions.com. Thanks to the VC team, Jay, JDO, ISIS 2342, and to Trinity for this wonderful platform that he provides for us. You guys rock. Join us next week, folks, for Betty Martini, Dangers on Aspartame, Bob Schlenker, Reverse Speech, and Lucy Wyatt, Approaching Chaos. That's it for tonight, folks. The podcast will be up shortly. This has been a GLP Voice Chat presentation. Good night, everyone.